Could a Super Bowl winning head coach return to his home state for a job with the Seattle Seahawks? What's going on, everybody? Good morning. Hope you guys are doing well. It is Thursday, which means that we are going to be having the Hawks Nest stream start about 3 hours from the upload of this video. So if you're watching this shortly after upload, the stream will begin at about noon Pacific. So try to be there. We're going to talk a little bit about this offensive coordinator search. We're also going to talk about roster stuff. A lot of Seattle Seahawks offseason primer stuff we need to go through. So be there. If you can't be there, watch the VOD later. We're going to go for probably a couple hours on whatever topics we can think of concerning the current Seattle Seahawks. My channel and his channel will both host it. So, yeah, let's do it. So, we've got another offensive coordinator candidate here in this video. And this is another one that I like. This is another one that I think could work really well. This is another one that I think is low on risk. Maybe there's not tremendous upside, but I do think there's some upside. And it seems to me that after winning a Super Bowl, Doug Pederson has proved to be one of those guys who is not quite good enough to be a reliable head coach in the NFL, but he is overqualified to be an offensive coordinator. He's like right in the middle. And I mean, we've seen him do some good things in the NFL as a head coach. It's not like it's been bad. He's a Super Bowl champion. But I think he might benefit from having less to think about by getting to step back and just be an offensive coordinator. Now, the question is he willing to do that? Doug Pederson has been in the NFL for a little while now as a coach. He's 57 years old. What if he wants to retire? What if he wants to take at least 1 year off? He did take a year off in 2021, so it's not like he is burnt out at this point in all likelihood, but what if he doesn't want to be an offensive coordinator? What if he feels like that's beneath him? He already won a Super Bowl as a head coach. Why would he be an OC? But nobody's going to give him a head coaching job, so maybe he just decides to shrug his shoulders and find something else to do with his life. You don't know. But if he's open to it, I think the Seahawks should be poking around here. Doug Pederson spent his early years and went to high school in Washington State, so he grew up in the Pacific Northwest, and he's got roots here. So unlike a lot of these coaches and players who might not be the biggest fans of having a job in the West Coast, Doug Pederson might embrace it. So that's another factor to consider as well. So let's take a look at his resume. Last 3 years, he's been a head coach for the Jacksonville Jaguars, 2022 to 2024. And, it's pretty clear why he got fired, right? Jacksonville finished his tenure very poorly. They won 4 games last year. They had one of the worst offenses in the league by points per game, 18.8, 26th. They were a little below average in EPA, negative .023, which is not that bad. But it's a team that really fell apart. The Jaguars were off to a really strong start in the first year and a half of Pederson's tenure. And then the last year and a half has been atrocious. I think they've won like 4 out of maybe 22, 23 games. Something really bad like that. So he certainly earned his firing. It is worth noting that the Jaguars offense went through a lot of problems outside of just the raw numbers. They had injuries. Trevor Lawrence got hurt last year, most famously, and they really haven't been able to build around him the way they wanted to. That's not a very good organization. Let's be clear about that. In 2023, this was the year where things kind of went off the rails because Jacksonville had a great start to the season, and then the bottom fell out, and they missed the playoffs when they were massive playoff favorites at one point in the season. Jacksonville 9-8. Their offense was okay. 13th in points per game, 19th in EPA. Interesting quirk here, even though their offense was scoring more points and ranked much higher in points per game in 2023, EPA per play, they were actually a little bit worse. You don't see that often, but it is something to think about. His best season was his first season in Jacksonville 2022. Jacksonville went 9-8, made the playoffs, won a playoff game, and Jacksonville's offense was good. 10th in points, 8th in EPA per play. So it was a good team that registered a 27-0 come from behind win in the playoffs, and it looked like things were off to a great start for Pederson and Jacksonville at that point, and then things just got, well, to this point. Okay. So the Philadelphia Eagles were the previous employer for Doug Pederson, and he had a successful run as the head coach of the Eagles from 2016 to 2020. Obviously, it ended ignominiously. 2020, Eagles were terrible. A lot of injuries to that offensive line. 4-11-1. They were near the bottom of the league in points per game, 21, and negative .055 EPA, 29th. One of the worst offenses in football. And they famously intentionally lost the final game of the year to get a higher draft pick. And that, in part, probably led to his dismissal from the team. I don't know if they fire him absent that. They might have written it out for one more year with him. I don't know. It's hard to know these things. But before that, before 2020, what he did in Philadelphia was good. 2019, I remember. This 2019 Philadelphia Eagles team had injury on top of injury on top of injury on top of injury. Doug Pederson was able to find a way to keep that team afloat. They won the division, made the playoffs. They played Seattle in the wild card round. I think we mostly remember that game. Maybe Philly wins that game if Carson Wentz doesn't get knocked out. It's possible. It's at least theoretically possible. 24.1 points per game, 12th in the league, and barely a positive EPA, average EPA. So it was about an average offense overall. And they had injury after injury this year. So honestly, I think this is a commendable feat. Remember, by this point, Doug Pederson was the one calling the shots for the offense. Frank Reich left after 2017, and I'm pretty sure Doug Pederson has been a consistent play caller at both of his teams since then. So he's doing head coaching duties and play calling duties. That's not always easy. 2018, the Eagles went 9-7 as well. Their offense was kind of in the same ballpark. 23 points a game, 18th, but EPA was a little bit higher, .037, 14th. This Eagles team made the playoffs, won the playoff game against the Bears, and then lost a competitive game to the Saints. So it wasn't a bad year. It was a disappointment after what happened in 2017, of course, but the Eagles were, they were maximizing what they could during this run, I think. 2018, 2019, it was a team that had lost a lot after their Super Bowl win, and they managed to stay afloat. And then you get to that Super Bowl win if you keep stepping back. 2017, 13-3, one of the best offenses in the league. Now, I think Frank Reich deserves a lot of the credit for what they were able to do because the offense was never the same after Reich left for Indy. But Doug Pederson's still the head coach. He's still got some ability to affect this. He's still got some ability to say that he is responsible for the good things. And this Eagles team overcame all kinds of injuries to win the Super Bowl. They didn't have their quarterback. They didn't have their left tackle. They didn't have their starting middle linebacker. They lost a lot, and they managed to keep it together enough to go beat Bill Belichick in a Super Bowl. That's something that I give a lot of credit to. And then 2016, that was his first year. That was the Carson Wentz rookie year. That was immediately after the Chip Kelly fallout. 7-9, okay team, average offense, 16th. 23 points per game. They had a lot of work to do, and they weren't able to do it all in one off season. So it wasn't a bad year. It wasn't a bad team. It was just they didn't have everything they needed to have quite yet, and the next year they got there. So yeah, overall, Doug Pederson's tenure was good. Okay, so before all that, before the head coaching stuff, which again I want to stress. As far as I know, the last 6 years of his tenure as a head coach in this league, he was calling plays. So he's done it before. He's had moderate success doing it. He's had good seasons. In Kansas City, he was not the play caller. We know that because Andy Reid calls plays wherever he is. So he's the offensive coordinator, but he doesn't do a lot. He is the offensive coordinator in name for 2 good offenses and 1 average offense during this time. These were the Alex Smith Chiefs. 2015, 25.3 points per game, 9th in the league. 2014, they were more average, 22 points per game. And then 2013, 27 points per game, which was 6th. So that's actually really good. But again, it's Andy Reid stuff, right? He's a protege of Andy Reid. That's why he got the job in Philadelphia. They wanted to tap the Eagles, the Andy Reid coaching tree. And I mean, he didn't do anything wrong, I guess, right? That Chiefs team was able to put together good offensive production with a quarterback as lackluster as Alex Smith. All right. The Philadelphia Eagles were his previous stop, so you can see that he spent some time under Andy Reid in Philly before becoming the head coach in Philly a few years later. And during that 2-year stint as the Eagles quarterback coach, we're not crazy. Well, let me reformat this a little bit. I just realized this isn't formatted the way I want it to be. Sorry, guys. Yes, there we go. Okay, beautiful. Okay, but anyway, quarterback coach for 2 years in Philadelphia, and they were not the years you want to be the quarterback coach in Philadelphia, right? You had Michael Vick these 2 years. Vick was okay-ish, kind of, sort of, not really. I mean, 2012, the Eagles' offensive line was so bad they never had a chance, but you're looking at these numbers and you're like, okay, 2,400 yards, 12 touchdowns, 10 picks, 68% completion, 330 rushing yards. Like, that's not really cutting it. Remember how good quarterbacks typically play under Reid. And you go back to 2011, the previous year, it's a tiny bit better, but it's still not cutting the mustard. Because in 2010, the previous year, before Doug Pederson became the quarterback coach, Michael Vick almost won MVP, even though he played like 11 games. He was playing some of the craziest elite level football we've ever seen. And look, I remember that. Vick got away with a lot of stupid stuff that year to put up those numbers. But it is notable that Vick regressed back to typical Michael Vick form without the elite running ability. So it's hard to really say this is a feather in the cap. You also had a little bit of Nick Foles in 2012. Foles played okay, 61% completion, 1,700 yards, 6 touchdowns, 5 picks. I mean, it was a bad team that had no chance. They had no offensive line. And the previous year, the backup was Vince Young. He was pretty awful. This was, I think, the end of Vince Young, the year before he retired. 60.8 rating. Again, the 2011 Eagles, that was the Dream Team Eagles. They were not good, but I mean, there's nothing here that you can point to and say, hey, that Doug Pederson's doing it. Because think about what happened to other quarterbacks under Andy Reid, right? Like 2010, Michael Vick was incredible. McNabb propped up his career for years and years and years under Andy Reid's tutelage. He made Kevin Cobb look good. He made A.J. Feely look good. He made Jay Fiedler look good, I think. Bunch of guys just cycled through that Eagles offense and played their best football at quarterback. And these 2 years, not the case. I'm not saying it's Doug Pederson's fault, but it's hard to give him positive credit for any of this. The 2 years prior to that, he was the offensive quality control coach for the Eagles, 2009 to 2010. Better years for sure. Both years the offense was elite, top 5, but when you're under Andy Reid, you're only going to get so much credit for anything, right? And that includes some of the bad stuff, by the way. Don't get me wrong, but 27.4 points per game. Michael Vick nearly wins MVP. 2009, 26.8 points per game, 5th in the league. I mean, it's good. Numbers are good. But when we're talking about Doug Pederson, we're mostly focusing in on the previous 8 years of his employ in the NFL. And it's good. It's not great, but he's a guy who might benefit tremendously from getting to focus on the offense and not be a head coach. So I like this one. I would be cool with this one. I think getting Doug Pederson would be a win. But at the same time, I think there are a couple guys out there who would bridge the gap a little bit better. Guys like his former understudy, Frank Reich, right? Frank Reich was the actual play caller and mastermind behind the Eagles offense that won the Super Bowl. Pederson was part of it, but you can only give him so much credit. All right. I will see you guys later. Go Hawks. Let me know what you think. Stream with the Hawks Nest at noon. Be there. And everyone have a good rest of your day.